What is going on, IB Nation? Welcome to another edition of Upon Further Review, Monday night style. And I appreciate everybody's patience, by the way. We didn't do a show last night because I was dealing with the kiddo who, I guess it's going around. There's like this congestion, like head thing, fatigue situation. So we got him loaded up with some, antibiotics and whatnot. And he's literally upstairs sleeping right now. So hopefully he can kick that, get it out of there, and be ready to go Friday night. Because got a huge game Friday night. Homecoming, big rivalry, conference title on the line, all of the above. So we appreciate you guys being patient, let me tend to the family. Wasn't able to watch the film while I was at urgent care. And, but hey, today's a new day. So thank you guys for hanging with us. And so Bryan and I have dove into the film, and we saw some things that we really liked for sure. But then we also saw some things that obviously still need to be improved upon. And this is also a very, very, very good time for a buy, Bryan. No doubt about that. So,
very curious to see what the news is on some of the guys that went down.
No doubt.
Very curious to see.
And what stinks is we don't have a press conference until next week. But
yeah, and they've been super weird about telling us anything regarding injuries. But the other thing too, Vince, it's like it's amazing what this team has done with as many injuries they've had. Like, I just want to say this: when you talk about thinking about the game, do you know Notre Dame played this game basically without 7 starters, essentially? Right? Like, one of them was a guy that you lost preseason, but then at points in the game, you were playing without 9 starters. If you think about it, Jagasol, no Billy Schrauth, no Ashton Craig, no Cooper Flanagan, who has been Notre Dame's best blocking tight end and has basically started at tight end and had more snaps than the other tight end so far. You played without those 4. Then you played without Jordan Patojo, Josh Burnham, and Christian Gray. 7 starters.
And for a minute, without Benjamin Morrison.
Then you lost Jordan Faison during the game. Jack Kaiser's out by halftime with an injury. Boubacar Traore goes out for the game. He's your new starter at Viper. He goes out in the second quarter. And like you said, there was one point. And one of your key rotation guys, Jaden Mickey's no longer on the team. So think about all the guys they played without during that game, and they still went out and beat the number 15 team in the country and did so with a lot of talent. However, you're kind of getting to the point now where, okay, you've been able to weather this storm so far, but you lose a couple more guys, and it's going to be a lot harder to do that.
Yeah.
If we're being honest. And, it just kind of, when you think about that, it just added a little bit of context to me for some of the mistakes that we saw, especially on defense. We'll talk about, because there was a lot of times where you're looking down there and there's like 6-7 freshmen or sophomores on the field.
Yep.
But also just, it talked a little bit about this team's grit. That they're playing without essentially 3 starters in the offensive line, and the offensive line had plenty of issues in this game, which we're going to talk about. But they fought their butts off. This defense made a lot of mistakes in this game, but they fought their butts off. The quarterback had some reads I didn't love, fought his butt off. You talk about the running back, Jeremiah Love, probably his worst game so far from a running standpoint, played his butt off in the game and was able to make plays in other ways, like as a lead blocker, as a pass catcher, stuff like that. Like, I was I don't want to say proud, because they're not my team, they're not my players, but I'm looking at it thinking about, if I was a Notre Dame coach, I would have 2 thoughts right now. Like, guys, there's a ton we got to clean up on the bye. And then the 2 is, I'm proud as heck of the way you guys handled adversity and fought your butts off in that game. And that's certainly something that to commend from this football team, Vince, and something that they had to overcome in order to win this game. But you start to think about it as you're breaking down film, because you're like, yeah, that's not the team I was watching when I was grading A&M film, or you know what I mean, just or even Purdue film from 2 weeks ago. Like, man, they could have used number 12 on Saturday on defense.
Mm-hmm.
They could have used number 5 in the second half.
Yeah, the whole time. Yeah, exactly.
Right. They could have used Billy Schrauth and Ashton Craig up the middle. I could have liked to see what those kids can do. Could have really, really used Charles Jagasol at left tackle. Could have really used Cooper Flanagan's blocking in the game at tight end, because the tight end was blocking was a hot mess. We'll get into that during the thing. So you look at all that and you're like, man, they went out and won that game and literally had a double-digit lead for most of the game, right, Vince? I mean, they took a double-digit lead in the first quarter, right?
Correct.
So they took a double-digit lead at what was the minute mark of that? So they tied it up at the 7-minute mark, took a double-digit lead at the 2:40 mark. You led all the second quarter, led all of the third quarter, and then Louisville ties it up makes it a 7-point game at the 11-minute mark, and it took Notre Dame 2 minutes to go down there and put it back up 14, and then 4 minutes later, Louisville scored to make it a 7-point game. I mean, so you led by double digits, by multiple scores for over half the game, despite all that, and only trailed for 5-6 minutes. And one drive. I mean, it was a long drive. That's the only reason it was 6 minutes.
I was going to say,
it was a long drive, but it was one possession.
They had possession of the ball. Yeah,
right.
Correct. Yeah,
right.
I mentioned this in the earlier show. It's like in the moment, it felt like a very tenuous 10-point lead. But when you look back on it, I mean, they pretty much had control of the game. With everything that you said, all the starters out, all the adversity that they had to face, all of those different things, they still had control of that game. The vast majority of that game, didn't feel like that in the moment. I'll be the first one to admit it. I was all in my feels there for a little while, like, oh boy, here, this is going to happen. And this is going to happen as you see more guys go down to injury and, fumbles. And, I mean, Notre Dame basically gift wrapped 14 points. It felt like to Louisville. Right. And you're like, oh my gosh, what is happening? What is going to happen here? But they had control, man. They had control of that game. And again, I will emphasize this is a wonderful time for a bye because there's a lot of things that they can get cleaned up schematically, philosophically, and injury-wise, obviously, as well. And I don't think I realized this going into the season, Bryan, not only is this a great time for a bye, but then you get these next 3 games, and then you get another bye to give you to the home stretch. That is just a really well-placed double bye situation for Notre Dame. Just the way these games are kind of stacking up and who they're playing within those segments too. It's fantastic, frankly, is what it feels like to me. So,
yep. And I do think they can be responded. You only had X amount of yards in the second and third quarter. Do you think that's control? Yeah, it's control because the other team didn't score. Exactly. I mean, again, we have this thing where we focus on these little tiny areas and we ignore it's like there's this little tiny thing they didn't do great over here. And then over here, there's all these good things, but I just want to zero in on this one thing so I can feel a way about that. They kept Louisville out of the end zone, right? Like they kept them off the board. I mean,
right.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good, guys, and so when you do that, you're controlling action.
Yes,
and Notre Dame,
exactly.
Louisville, every time Louisville scored, Notre Dame was able to go out there and make sure that it never became a game again. And yeah, that's control. When you lead the number 15 team in the country for over 52 minutes, yeah, you did pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things about the yardage aspect that I think are skewed. Notre Dame number 1. We'll talk about that when we get into the offensive side. But look, that's control. Yes, that's control. Right. Notre Dame was the better football team on Saturday from the start of their first drive on offense to the end of the game. It didn't start great. It definitely didn't start great. But I think there's a lot to like about that. There's a lot to be proud of if you're a football coach. And then also a lot to look at and say, fellas, that was great that you did that. We can't keep playing this way every week, though, from
Absolutely.
an execution. Bring this effort every week. Bring this focus every week. Bring this energy every week. That part's great. But we got to clean up the execution part. We got to clean up. And that's what we're going to focus on a lot today in the rest of the show.
So let's jump into the offensive keys. So this is kind of how we do the show, everybody. If you have not tuned into an Upon Further Review, I want to make sure I remind you kind of how we do things. We will go over the offensive keys to success, keys to victory for the offense. Then we'll do the same thing for the defense to kind of decide, did Notre Dame get the check mark there? Did they get a minus there? What is it? How did they do? So we'll do that for the offense. We'll do that for the defense. And then we will talk about our takeaways on both sides of the football, as well as the key moments in the game and kind of where things may have turned or, whatever those key moments happen to be. we're going to talk about those as well. So we kind of chop it up into 4 segments: keys, takeaways, and we'll kind of go from there. And I think we should probably answer everybody's questions at some point or another as we go through all 4 of those various segments. And then, of course, yes, at the end, we will also hit Super Chats. Tonight is one of those shows where it's not a mailbag. And so if you do want to get a question in, or you want to make a comment or whatever, make sure you hit us with one of those Super Chats, and then we will make sure to get to that at the end of the show. We are not ignoring you as they come in. It'll just be kind of an end of the show. It's just kind of how we always do it. So yeah, offensive keys to the game, Bryan. Let's jump right into it. You had your offensive keys to the game show earlier on in the week, and the first one is usually the same, and it's
always the same, my friend.
Yes, start fast, Notre Dame.
Until they can come out and do it on a consistent basis, that will always be a key. And then occasionally it'll be a key for certain games anyway. And Vince, I mean, this is about as good as it got against a good opponent. I would argue this is the best start to a game that a Notre Dame offense has had against a good opponent. I'm trying to think about, some other games like last year, they beat a really good NC State team, but the offense struggled early on. They didn't really break it open until the second quarter when Audric went on that long run, and they had a couple big plays. Like, their offense didn't do a whole lot in the first half. They just had they had the big long run by Audric. They had the big long pass catch by Tobias. You had the broken play, scramble, long catch by Chris Tyree. Outside of that, it's like the offense didn't do a whole lot. They put the game away, but as far as the start, they didn't do a great job with the start. I mean, USC was more about the defense having a great start and giving them minus, fields of less than 10 yards to have to put it in the end zone. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at Marcus Freeman's tenure, and what I consider Marcus Freeman's tenure is Ohio State 22 to now, right? I don't count the bowl win, and I probably wouldn't count it, if I'm being honest, if he won it, because, again, it wasn't his team.
You're right, exactly. And he was an interim. In my opinion, he was an interim at that point. I mean, yes, exactly. He got the job,
and but that wasn't his coordinator and all that, but he was in a different role. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, start Ohio State to now. It's hard for me to think of a better start in a game against a good opponent. We've seen them put some bad teams away early, but against a good opponent. And that's something that, to me, I mean, this is a plus, Vince, because I think it was incredibly important to the success of this football team and you win in the game. I don't know if Notre Dame would have been able to have this game might have looked a lot different if you didn't do it, because when you put Louisville behind the sticks the way that they did, it's like it made it much harder for that. It's going to be tough to play catch up against this defense, and even with spotting them 2 touchdowns, because Notre Dame spotted Louisville 2 touchdowns. Like I heard I was told that a national guy said this. I didn't hear it, that the game was more about Louisville's mistakes, and I'm thinking, Louisville's mistakes? What are you talking about? I'm like, Louisville's had 2 touchdowns that covered less than 20 yards, each. And it was a thing where it's like, you don't start fast in this game, Vince. You don't respond to that early drive. And I know we'll talk about that specific drive in a little bit, but if you don't have that response after fumbling the opening kickoff, defense gives up a touchdown. You had 2 blown coverages essentially on the first drive, and they go score. And all of a sudden your offense does what it's done all year in regard to just like not looking great and things like that. But I mean, they have started, like I said, with a score, and now 4 of the 5 games, but it just wasn't that score. It was your defense then went and forced a turnover, and you took it 53 yards for another touchdown. Your special teams forces a turnover. You punch it in one play. I mean, you scored a touchdown on your first 3 drives of the game. You took a 21-7 lead. If you can't get a plus for that, then we just need to stop giving out pluses. You know what I mean? So those are the things you look at, Vince, and say, hard for me to say, because like you said, you made this point in the postgame show. Yes, the 3rd touchdown was a short field. The first 2 touchdowns, you had to go over 50 yards to get in the end zone.
Yeah, you started in minus territory in both of them.
Right.
I mean, the first one was obviously, a touchback, so it was minus 25, and you got to go 75. But the other one, you were still in minus territory. You were still on your side of the field. And so that's still a drive. Like, that doesn't just happen. Look, the difference is for the 2 touchdowns that Louisville scored in the first half were both on turnovers, obviously. One was 3 plays, 24 yards. The other one was 3 plays, 9 yards, for a total of 2 minutes and 54 seconds. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they got both of their touchdowns in the first half. Notre Dame's one touchdown drive. Well, you can pick either one. Pick either one of the first two touchdown drives. They're both longer and they both lasted longer. Okay. So it's a completely different scenario. If Notre Dame doesn't turn the ball over, Bryan, Louisville doesn't score in the first half.
They get a field goal, right? No, they didn't get their field goal to they didn't get their field goal to the third quarter. Fourth quarter. You're correct.
Fourth quarter. Yeah, so they're scoreless in the first half. They scored because of Notre Dame's mistakes.
Their 2 touchdown drives in the first half, Vince, traveled a total of 33 yards.
Yes.
And the first one only traveled 33 yards because they had a penalty, right? Because I believe they started at the 16. No, they started at the 24. They started at the 24. They started at the 24. Yeah. I thought it was the 16. And so it started at the 24, and you go 24 yards. And I mean, you're already in field goal range. You recover the ball in field goal range, and then they go down and score. And then their second touchdown drive went 9 yards.
Correct.
Like 33 yards for 14 points. That's a pretty good ratio. Notre Dame had one of those drives.
Turnovers.
They did.
Yeah, they did.
But they had one of those drives. Notre Dame's other touchdown drives were 75, 53, 75 yards, and then they had the field goal drive was a shorter drive as well. Right.
Off the interception. So,
right. So you look at it and say, yeah, that's plus Louisville in regard to getting points off turnovers, essentially points off short fields. They won that battle 14-10 over Notre Dame. So the fast start was a big part of that, because now you've got Louisville playing catch up all game against that defense, and you're going to make some plays here and there. I felt like Notre Dame I was disappointed with that last touchdown drive they gave up, because I thought they kind of went away from what was working and forced Louisville to go on a longer drive and take some minutes off, whatever. But NotreAme, I thought, controlled that, and it was because of that start. It got the crowd fired up.
Oh,
you could tell the players had some confidence. You almost gave it up, though, when you fumbled. When Jadarian Price fumbled, that sucked a lot of the wind out of their sails, and Notre Dame never really recovered from that, if you think about it. But because of the 21-7 start, it didn't cost you the way it might have in a different situation. Because, like, imagine if they didn't get one of that let's say they didn't have that second touchdown drive where they took over the 53 and they kind of, fuddled around and punted it. Now, all of a sudden, Jadarian has that fumble and Louisville goes down and scores. It's all of a sudden a 14-14 ball game just like that. Sure. You needed every single one of those drives to really make it comfortable, because when you play a team like Louisville, they're going to punch back. Right? That's the route. They're going to punch back, and they did. Sure. And Notre Dame was able to counter it and go out there and get the W. So this is about as impressive of a plus as I've given Notre Dame since I've been thinking about I'm trying to think of another game, Vince, where they played, like I said, a good team. Like, and even some of the teams that were ranked that weren't good, that were not, maybe not so great. I still don't remember them starting this well. Well, I'm trying to, like, I'm trying to think, like, Notre Dame, I'm thinking like 2022 against North Carolina, but that was an unranked football team, but Notre Dame didn't get their first score till the second quarter of that game, Vince. You know what I mean? Now the second quarter they went off, but they didn't get a single point in the first half or first quarter. Their first touchdown came at the 12:57 mark of the first quarter, or second quarter. Excuse me. I'm saying this all types are wrong. So that's another game where, that wasn't a ranked team, but that was a good team in my opinion. But you didn't start fast there. You fell behind 7-0, and you didn't get your first touchdown to the second quarter. So I honestly can't think of another game against an opponent like this where Notre Dame had a better start under Marcus Freeman than what we saw. Yeah, I'm looking through it now, and because again, against Clemson, you jumped out on Clemson early, but that was because of your defense. Again, in your special teams. Your first touchdown of the game was on special teams. So, that's pretty good start. Pretty good start. And matter of fact, was last year against USC. Remember how Notre Dame only scored 7 points in the first quarter of that game. Notre Dame's only touchdown in the first quarter against USC last year was the touchdown after Xavier Watts' interception, the 12-yard touchdown drive. Notre Dame's second touchdown of that game, Vince, did not come until 4:14 left in the second quarter, and it was a 2-yard touchdown drive. So, again, you think about, 48 points. Well, that was the defense that did that. Yeah. So, I would argue this is the best start that Notre Dame has had against a team like that. And it's even Syracuse 2 years ago. That was another one. The defense got the first score of that game. The offense didn't play great early in that game. They played okay, but didn't play great early in that game. That's another one that you could maybe consider. But I don't even think they played as well that game because the defense got them sparked. Notre Dame only scored Notre Dame's first offensive touchdown didn't come until the 8:23 mark of the second quarter. So yeah, they had missed field goal, punt, touchdown. So they didn't. Yeah, so 2 non-scorers on their first 2 drives. Go ahead, Vince.
Yeah, the only point I want to make about the fast start is in a vacuum, if you just look at what the offense did in their first 3 drives, score 3 touchdowns, boom, 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 21 points, first quarter, great. It's still a fast start, right? But then you open it up a little bit to what the atmosphere was like in the stadium, what the situation was after that turnover and after Louisville punches it in. And it's a completely different scenario, and it even enhances more the fast start by the offense. You know what I mean? So like you're down 7-0 instantly before the offense even has a chance to touch the football. Okay. It's a big swing because of the fumble. It's a short field. They go in, they punch it in after 3, right? Okay. So Notre Dame goes down and scores. All right. It's 7-7. Defense is back on the field. Let's see what they do. 46-yard run. Okay. You're like, oh crap. What's wrong with the like in your emotional brain, you're thinking, what's wrong with the defense? Now, they cause a fumble. They give the ball back to the offense. They go down and score another touchdown, right? And then the special teams gives them a short field. They score another touchdown. So the way that it happened, so not just the fact that in the first 3 series they went and scored a touchdown, which is great in a vacuum, but the situation that they were in, the way that they picked up the defense, I think really for the first time this season. The offense picks up the defense and like, guys, we got
defense
you.
Was having it. Yep.
That was huge to me for this team. That was absolutely massive for this team that the offense finally said, guys, we got you. We're going to go put some points on the board, give you guys a second to kind of regroup and do your thing. And then the defense played pretty well down the stretch, right? So it was
not a good start for the Notre Dame defense.
No,
not a good start for the Notre Dame defense. Yeah, you got the great turnover, but that came after a 40-plus yard run
by the quarterback.
You just blew a read zone, So that's and so people talked about the Oklahoma State game because they remember it being 28-7. Notre Dame punted on 3 of their first 5 possessions against Oklahoma State in that game. They only scored 2 touchdowns on their first 5 possessions. They started to kind of pull away late. So they went touchdown, punt, and then they got 2. Then they went touchdown, missed field goal, touchdown. So they didn't really start rolling until second quarter. Late first quarter, second quarter, and that was aided by the defense in that game as well. You had Oklahoma State getting a fumble. So. Those are big, Vince. That's a great start. I think you say that, Vince, and I'm curious how the defense is going to look at that coming out of the bye week. Like, hey guys, maybe this is something that can get us going. So first key to the victory, Vince, is the most important one. Big time plus. Big time plus
for sure. Next key to victory that you had on the show was mixing up the run game. Thought it was good early. But later on, I don't think that was the case.
Well, I don't even think early it was even what I am referring to here. What they did a good job of early, Vince, is showing some new wrinkles.
Okay.
They did their quarterback, and I didn't even know what to call it because I called it counter because of the backfield action, but it's almost like power. They either took the center or guard. So if the center was covered, they would down block with the play side guard, kick the center, and then wrap the running back instead of the tight end or the backside tackle. So they didn't run a count. We've seen them run counter Trey this year. We've seen them run sort of the new school counter with the backside guard and the tight end. We've seen them do some different looks where the tight end would go one way and come back. We've seen quarterback counter with the tight end and the guard pulling. They had the center or the backside guard. If the center was uncovered, he would down block, and then the backside guard would kick out, and then they would wrap around. So I called it counter, but it almost looked like inverted power. Because on power, normally it's you get a quick play side kick and then a wrap from the backside. This was more of a center to backside wrap, so that's why I went counter, because it's just blocking scheme wise, it just looks more like counter. But the backfield action, I said earlier was more counter. That was actually more power. Excuse me. The blocking was more counter, but the backfield action was literally just drop step by the run quarterback, and then he would go. That's what Power O used to be, the old school Power O, Vince, out of under center. It was just drop, open step, let the blocking go, and then boom, you go. And so those are all things that we looked at, and you say, man, boy, that was a nice wrinkle. You had some inside zone stuff,
Sure.
but other than that, like that wrinkle got you some success early. But outside of that, it was pretty much just that in inside zone, with the exception of they ran a quick pitch to Aeneas Williams that went big, and I was like, man, please bring something like that back at some point in time. But I'm looking at it, Vince, and the runs were, quarter Q counter, inside zone, a quick kick, quarterback counter, inside zone, quarterback counter, inside zone, quarterback counter, inside zone, running back counter, inside zone, quarterback counter, the quick pitch, inside zone, counter, inside zone, Q counter, Q lead, counter, inside zone, counter. That's literally every run they ran. And my thing is, like, give me something. This is what we talked about in postgame. Give me something that takes the eyes, messes with the eyes and the discipline of the Louisville defense. And in this game, you basically, like, I don't think the offensive line played great. I think they played hard, and I commend them for that. But I didn't think they played great. But I don't think they were helped a lot in their run blocking was not great, Vince. It wasn't bad. I mean, they competed their butts off. I didn't think they were helping them at all. Everything was downhill. And even the run by Jadarian Price that he bounced outside for a 14-yard gain, which was probably the best run of the game, was more of an inside zone that he popped and almost got called for holding because of Mitchell Evans on that particular run.
Remember
but
that?
Honestly,
you and I both looked at each other like, they could have called that.
They got away with it. And I wouldn't have been like, I'd have been like, okay, that's a little ticky-tack, but he did yank the jersey. I mean, he clearly yanked the jersey.
His hands were completely outstretched like this. Like, dude.
Now, here's that guy has no chance at tackling Jadarian Price. That's what's so frustrating about it.
Yes.
Like, you don't need to do that with these running backs. And so I just felt like, give me a jet. Give me some sort of, you want to run quarterback power? That's cool. Go 21 personnel, jet sweep Jeremiah Love, and then bring the quarterback power the other way, right? You know what I mean, Vince? Like, so give me 21 personnel, okay? And then you can put Jeremiah in the front side slot. You can have your tight end backside if you still want to do that. You can send them on a jet motion, fake that action that way, and then bring that kick, bring that running back wrap. It times up perfectly with what you're trying to do in that particular play. There's all types of things that you could do, Vince, where man, you got to go out there and make those, give your guys a chance to do something. Give me another toss play. Give me something where you're using we're running downhill against them. Those are things that I want to see more of, Vince, and that's where that lack of creativity came from, because the thing we said when we broke down that mix up the runs is the best part of the Louisville defense is right up the middle. And you basically took an offensive line that had three guys that didn't start the season as your backups, and you said, hey, guys, we're going to run right at this team for 60 minutes and not give you guys really anything to kind of hang your hats on to kind of help you get going. We're just going to do that and expect you guys to get at it. And I didn't think that was putting your guys in the best position to be successful, to be honest with you. I give it a little bit of I give it a minus overall. I mean, it was nice early. It was some good wrinkles early, but Louisville kind of figured those wrinkles out by the second half, man. This is a well-coached defense as well. They figured those wrinkles out, and I didn't feel like Notre Dame really did enough to take advantage of that, to be honest with you. Like, I thought there was a lot more that they could have done to have some success in that game, to be honest with you, and that they didn't do. Like, even on that 4th and 1, give me a smoke, give me an orbit motion with your Z, where if the linebackers pause for just a second with that reverse action, maybe you come back to that on the next 4th down or something like that. So there just was a lot of that stuff where I would have liked to seen do some things with your run game that just doesn't allow Louisville to just play downhill for 60 minutes against your run game. I didn't think that made a lot of sense. And so I didn't like that And that was a bit of an issue that we saw with the run game last year, Vince, is they'd have some wrinkles early that worked. Remember against Clemson? They're running some of that get pin and pull stuff that worked early. Audrick's got like 82 yards at half, and then that's pretty much like what he finished with because they made some adjustments and that stuff wasn't there anymore. And you didn't well, they figured it out. Now we're effed. That's something that's going to have to get better. It's going to have to get a lot better. And I don't know who that's on, but you're going to have to be able to go into some more games with, yes, it's good that you have these run game wrinkles, but you've got to have some stuff that starts kind of jerking with these opponents where their eye discipline has to be on point. And if it's not, then, okay, they didn't move at all to those last 2 jet motions. So you know what we're going to do this time? We're going to go right back to that. We're going to run a jet or something out of it. This is a defense that I thought was very aggressive and was prone to giving up the big plays, which we saw at times. There was a lot more Notre Dame could have done for that. Now, here's the thing, Vince. I've had somebody say this to me, and I agree with this, and I said this to you, and you agreed with me as well. I believe that after the fumble, and then I think it was like a series later when Riley lands on the ball and that guy hits him and they don't call it a late hit, I don't think Riley was necessarily quite right after that, throwing the ball. And I think between that and the fumble, I think the offensive coaching staff said, hey, we're not going to do anything that's going to cost us or
it's going to jeopardize.
And that's fine. You can still run the football.
Yes. Right.
But there's some different things you can do running the football to pop one. And so that was kind of my thing. Definitely my thing of okay, you want to reduce your receivers are playing bad. Your offensive line pass pro was awful. And your quarterback's not comfortable because of it. Okay, cool. We're going to run the ball a lot. I get it. But, coach, maybe we could do this. Maybe we could do that to try to at least get them thinking and moving, and maybe we can catch one. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I would have liked to see a little bit more of, Vince, is some of that stuff. So I'm going to give them a minus for mixing up the run game. Again, early wrinkles were nice, but they never did anything outside of those early wrinkles.
Sure. Next one was very interesting. And it's one that I don't know that you've had in here before because it's kind of an offshoot of start early, start quick or whatever, but it was get Riley Leonard going early. And I thought that they tried to do that last week and he just missed some of those layups that we talked about, right? They did try to do something to get him going. They tried to, but it didn't quite work. This time, though, I thought they did make a concerted effort to get him going early. They ran him. They threw him. He would have been 6 for 6 on the first drive if it wasn't for the drop. I mean, so he ended up being 5 of 6 on the first drive. I know he ran the ball on the first drive. I don't have the details in front of me as far as how many times, but I know he was an integral part of that first drive that was poetry, basically getting that first touchdown. I thought they did a pretty good job of getting Riley Leonard going early in this game, both through the air and on the ground. And I think we've learned that they do have to get him going on the ground as well as through the air. And I think they did a good job of both early on in this game.
This is a plus for me, Vince, because the point is you nailed the point, which is it's not just about getting Riley going with some early throws. I pointed out, when you look at Riley's success, he started throwing the ball better after they gave him a couple designed runs. And that's just for you. It's about knowing your quarterback, right? You got to know your 100%. Quarterback. What is he comfortable with? So they come out first play of the game. They throw a little quick screen. All right, easy throw. He doesn't mess that one up. Next play, quarterback counter. Next play, inside zone. And there's almost always a read built into that. Next play action pass with an over route. He ends up stepping in the pocket, finding Jaden Greathouse. He would have had Jaden Greathouse open either way. Then they go another inside zone, which always has a read built into it. And then that kind of got you going a little bit. And then you end the drive with back-to-back runs from the quarterback. And so you end up giving him 3 designed carries on the opening drive, some quick throws that got him into rhythm. And I thought he was comfortable at that point in time. And then you come out your next series and, you run quarterback counter on the first play. You run back-to-back inside zones after that. 16-yard run by Jadarian Price, a gain of 0. It's 2nd and 10. And then you run the drop back that gets, the all verts, and he finds Jaden Greathouse, and boom, it's over the top. You third drive, first play, quarterback run. So I thought they did a great job of getting him going early, and I would have been very curious to see if his play would have continued that way if he doesn't get the wind knocked out of him and gets ribs jacked up. Like he wasn't, you could tell he was noticeably in pain the rest of the game. And even on that throw to Jaden Harrison in the fourth quarter, like it was a great read. It was a great time. You could tell he was aiming that a lot more than he did that early seam route to Jaden Greathouse. And so you don't know, but you just wonder, how did that affect his play? But by that point in time, it was 21-7. And so, you talk about getting him going early, which is the point. They did that, and it helped him jump out to a 21-7 lead. So I give him a check. I give him a check for this one. I mean, again, he was good early. He wasn't great early. He was good.
Right. But they got him going early. Like he looked more comfortable in this game. I would even say either prior to the quote unquote injury or even out, he looked more comfortable in this game to me than he's looked all season. And that's good. He's progressing. I mean, that's what everybody needed to see. And I think a lot of that had to do with the way they started things off. I really do. And so that I give this one a plus.
Yeah.
For me. All right. So
even above the check, you give it a plus?
I give it a plus. I think they did a good job of getting him going early, and he responded as well. So it's a two-pronged thing.
I dig that.
I give it a plus. I give it a plus. I realize there are some spots where he could have played better.
You're
That's
good,
cool,
man. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not pushing back on it. I dig it, right? I mean, it's I'm not going to talk you off of it. I just was like, oh, so you're going plus, not just a check? Like, okay, cool.
I liked it.
Because again, Vince, 21 points in the first 3 possessions.
Right.
The quarterback made a lot of plays on it. I mean, I get it. I might be a little bit of an harder grader today, but
it's okay.
I dig it. I dig it. I think your points are valid.
Yeah. Situational success is our next.
That's right.
I'm saying it in here. Don't worry.
Yes, I get you.
Situational success. 3rd down, red zone. In this case, 4th down, I think would also apply in this particular game because they did go for it 3 times on 4th down.
It's
situational success.
Situational football it encompasses a lot of things that I thought were going to be important.
Right.
It's 3rd down offense. It's 4th down offense. It's red zone offense. It's 2-minute drill. It's 4-minute drill. And we didn't talk about this going in, but if you were to ask me what situational football entails, it also includes sudden change. Yeah. And that situation, you practice that on your situational day, sudden change, right? Sudden change is your defense just got you the ball. What are you going to do with it? And this was a mixed bag, Vince, to be honest with you. And so I've said in the past, like check plus. This is the first time I'm ever going to give a check minus.
Yeah.
Because there's parts of this that I thought were really good and factored into the win, right? 4th down offense was huge. We talk about that opening drive. You had to convert a 4th down on that drive. You had to convert a 4th down by throwing on a sprint out to the left, something that Riley missed, I think, a couple times in the last couple games. Missed badly to Mitchell.
In that regard, that was kind of a ballsy call, to be honest with you.
Yes, it was. And Riley nailed it. Great route by Jaden Thomas, by the way.
Sure.
It wasn't even a pivot. It was just, you got to win. Okay, for all of you fans at home that want to know when I use the word, you've got to win. Go watch Jaden. There was no technique there. It was just, I got to figure out how to get stemmed on this guy and beat him outside. And it was like dance and then like leaned on him and then snapped it off. It was a great route by Jaden Thomas. Got himself separation. Boom. 1st down. Riley nailed it. So you converted that 4th down. You converted a 4th down later in the game, Vince, and I know that you ended up not getting the second 4th down on that drive, but by getting the first 4th down, I believe they took another 1.5 to 2 minutes off of the clock, if I remember correctly, with that drive. So I could be wrong on that, but no, I'm right. You had that play that first 4th down ran at the 1:02 mark of the 3rd quarter. And that drive ended at Louisville took over at the 13:29 mark. So you ran over 2.5 minutes off the clock and moved the ball down, another 7 or so yards, but you ran another 2.5 minutes off the clock in the second half by getting the first 4th down, which isn't great, but it's a good step. So I thought 4th down was good. 3rd down, you went 2 of 10, and it was awful. Just third down offense was a mess.
It's not good.
Red zone offense, 2 red zone trips, 2 touchdowns plus. You know, I mean, you can only score touchdowns in the red zone on the trips you get in the red zone. You know, you're not going to fault them for having 2 30-plus yard touchdown passes, right? Which I had a stat today I talked about. You know, said, well, Notre Dame's offense got to do a better job getting into the red zone more, and that is true. That is certainly true. But 11 of their 21 touchdowns this year have been over 20-yard gains. And then another one of their 21 touchdowns was a defensive touchdown. Now, again, there's a lot of opportunities for the offense to get more red zone trips, right?
Sure.
But it's both of those things factor into that. And so,
they pass through the red zone on the way to the end zone. So, you know.
Sure. Right.
No, but I know what you're saying.
They passed to go. They didn't land on go, right?
Right, exactly.
And, so you look at that, Vince, and that part was very good. 2-minute offense. We didn't really see them run 2-minute offense, but I felt like their sudden change offense was pretty good. Sudden change can, you know, and hey, you need to answer. You know, that's kind of part of situational football. Do you answer the other team scores? And they did a pretty good job of that. So
I think
some things I give them a check for, some things I give them a -4, Vince. So I kind of go, because you had the first, you talk about answering situational football, right? Sudden change. Okay, or situational thing where you've got to answer
a score. Yeah,
your special teams gives up you're getting ready to go on the field. You're getting ready to take the ball. Your kick return team fumbles. They recover. Oh shoot, we got to step back. Defense goes out there. I think 3 plays, gives up a touchdown.
Yep.
That's kind of sudden change. And what do you respond with? 75 yards, 12 plays, touchdown.
6
your
minutes
defense
off the clock.
forces a fumble. Yeah. First play, you just scored to make it 7-0. Defense first play. Force fumble, you got to get the ball back. You go down, touchdown drive, right? I think next possession, special teams gives you a short field. You go out there, you get 7 out of that. And so, that and then late in the game, fourth quarter, they score to make it a 1-touchdown game. Notre Dame's very next drive, they go down the field and score a touchdown. And I felt like that was evidence to me that my belief that they kind of said, hey, we need to get out of this and not give them chances was that drive.
Because then when they needed to score, they
open it up a little bit.
Yeah,
right. And not just that they did, but they did some stuff where like they had some things that they were sitting on to, you know, get them there. So, I mean, you talk about the bootleg, the right before the slot, you had the slot fade, you had the little read zone Y under bootleg to again, because you're thinking, okay, Riley's rolling right again, he's rolling right again. And then 3 plays later, you come back with that throw. And you had the motion slot fade for the big game. They knew they could kind of get that with the motion. Why didn't they do that sooner to put the game away? Because I don't think they wanted to take a chance of exposing Riley to a big hit. That time he caught it, dropped back, threw it, and still got pressured. You know what I mean? So
right.
And then you had to be sitting on that screen all day because I talked about it last week before the show. I said, look, this is going to be there.
I mean, they've been doing that sprint out, like
3 weeks.
Yes.
I mean, well, including this game, it was this game. You know, so 3 games, including that game.
Yes.
And, you know, you're sitting on that call. What's a great time to do it? Okay, let's go put this game away. They're trying to get a stop. They're trying to make a play.
They need to get their ears back.
They're exactly, Vince. They're pinning their ears back. Now's a great time to go do it. And they went and did it. So, you know, that was that part. So again, there were some things that were good, some things that were not good. Overall, I give it a check minus. If that's, I'm making that up.
I think that's fair though. No, I think that's fair though, because
third down. If you just change third down, Vince, this is a different ball game. It's not a close one. Like your failure there made this a much closer game than it should have been.
Correct.
Your inability to move the chains on third down made this game closer than it even should have been and could have been. And that part's got to get better. And you know, you've played 5 games now, and your third down offense has been really bad in 3 of those 5 games. That's not good. The 2 best defenses you've played all year, Texas A&M and Louisville, you've gone 4 of 23 on third down. Not good. Got to get fixed. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at. I just check minus. There's some things they did really well and some things I just didn't think they did a good enough job with.
That's going to do it for our keys to victory offensively revisited. And make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends. And of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. It's like a new world over there on the boards. And I invite everyone to head on over there. because there is some really good conversation going on there. There may be a video being posted later by me that I somewhat promised in the last show. So you never know. It's a bye week and have some fun with it. So we might have to throw that up there. But you're never going to be able to see it unless you're on the boards, boards.irishbreakdown.com.